What's going on there, guys? Good evening. It's the Earthmaster here on this finally Friday. It's Friday night, party night, October 14th, 2022. It is about 7:30 p.m. California time here along the West Coast, and quite a bit of earthquake activity ramping up out into the middle of the Pacific. Of course, we all know what's out there, and that is Hawaii, having a pretty good significant swarm of earthquakes. Now this is just a 1.7 and above. If I were to raise that, or at least lower the magnitudes there, we'd see this thing go well off the chart. We'll check that out here in just a second. Latest quake shows a 3.3 in another area we're kind of watching, having its own little earthquake swarm down there around the New Zealand area. All right, let's go ahead and check out the activity on the USGS map here. Bring up the big island of Hawaii, where we've seen a 5.0 earthquake today. Actually had kind of two earthquakes queued up pretty much at about the same time, within seconds of each other. We had a 4.6, and then just a few seconds, literally a few seconds, we've seen a 5.0 in the mix as well. Now, when I last did the update, this 5.0 was a little bit more inland, away from the Pahala area, so things have kind of adjusted and they've been looked at far as the technical specs go, and this is the location where they put the 5.0 and the 4.8. Although, look at these depths of the earthquakes there on those two earthquakes, 9 kilometers and 11 kilometers in this swarming mix. So most of the time with this swarm, and I say swarm because it's been an ongoing thing since they've been monitoring it since the 60s. This activity is much shallower, more towards the surface than the majority of the swarms that we see. Looking at the latest data here, looks as though it's made a major adjustment here in the depth of the earthquakes. Now, let me go back prior to the 4.6. You can see quite a few twos out here in the mix. Let me bring this back up a little bit. Just want to show you guys a little bit of the area. There's a 2.0 out there. And we can go back hours before the activity kicked up and see that the majority of the swarming activity kicks up around 32 kilometers deep. That's the average. Sometimes deeper, sometimes a little bit shallower. But with this 4.6 and 5.0, we've noticed a huge change in the depth of the earthquakes. They're much more shallower, much more towards the surface areas. And that goes for all of them now. So I'm not for sure what the 4.6 or the 5.0 did or triggered down there, but it definitely made some major adjustments in the depth of these earthquakes that are occurring with this activity out here. The USGS did put out a notification system here, an informational statement on Mauna Loa. This was just shortly after this earthquake activity this afternoon. Two moderate earthquakes occurred beneath the southern end of the island of Hawaii at 9:07 a.m. this morning. The first earthquake, a magnitude 4.6, was slightly offshore and south of Pahala at about 8 miles deep. It was followed 24 seconds later by a larger magnitude 5.0 earthquake just south of Pahala. Looks like about 4.6 miles beneath Highway 11. These two larger earthquakes were followed by a string of aftershocks, mostly less than magnitude 3, but including some larger ones up to magnitude 4. The aftershock sequence is continuing roughly between 0 and 7 miles, that's 0 and 12 kilometers below the area south of Pahala. The aftershocks could continue for several days to possibly weeks and may be large enough to be felt. Here's a little bit of what they think may be going on. This sequence of earthquakes appears to be related to readjustments along the southeast flank of Mauna Loa. There has been no immediate effect on the continuing unrest beneath Mauna Loa summit, which remains elevated at levels similar to the past week. On several occasions, large earthquakes have preceded past eruptions of Mauna Loa, though these have typically been larger than today's earthquakes. It is not known at this time if this sequence of earthquakes is directly related to the ongoing unrest on Mauna Loa. So this is a developing deal out here on the Big Island right now, and I think it's something we need to monitor pretty closely considering all the swarming we've seen here over the past couple weeks. Now I want to show you the separate swarming up here specifically at the summit area of Mauna Loa. And by the way, Mauna Loa is one of the most active largest active volcanoes on the Earth. A little bit of info here real quick before we go into that the sequence of quakes there. Having erupted 33 times since its first well-documented eruption back in 1843. It has produced large voluminous flows of basalt that have reached the ocean 8 times since 1868. And check out when it last erupted, back in 1984. So I think we're a little bit overdue as far as intervals go. If we're doing 33 times since 1843, yeah, we're definitely long overdue. I think this thing is about ready to put on a show pretty soon. And I may just go over there. The largest population center, Hilo area, Mauna Loa is certain to erupt again, and with such propensity, oh man, what is that word? Propensity. Okay, I'm going to pass on that one. To produce large flows. That one kind of caught me off guard there. We carefully monitor the volcano for signs of unrest. So looking at this map here over the last couple weeks, this is actually the last 30 days of activity. Yes, this is abnormal for one. We normally don't see this much earthquake activity at the summit levels. And then we had a separate swarm over here. Little bit deeper earthquake activity down where the magma could be recharging, so to speak, the chambers just to the northwest here of the summit regions. And now we're seeing some activity down here along the southeastern flank. Now, here's the other swarming that I'm talking about aside from today's activity. I just kind of want to focus here on this region. And the majority of this activity, if you want to count away today's activity, is deep. Look at all these depths here of these earthquakes. They're very consistent, very regular with these levels, 30 to 34 kilometers deep. And it's been that way for quite some time until today. Until we've seen the 4.6 and the 5-pointer that struck. So something is definitely making some major adjustments out here. And there's been some chat. I even covered that a while back. The hill in a slump could possibly, potentially slide off here and create a mega tsunami along the Pacific. I did do a little update on this about a year, maybe a year and a half ago or so. I'll see if I can find that and include that at the end of this video as a up next on the YouTube channel. So look for that. So there's always that potential there of the hill in a slump issues. And I'm not going to cover that tonight because it's a long little ordeal. Long and little. Just doesn't sound right. A long ordeal. There's nothing really little about it because that could be a major player in producing a hazard out there. So, have we seen any changes up here at the summit levels? I can't say we have. The 2.4 and the 2.9, very shallow earthquakes up here. It doesn't look like yet that it's done any type of change here to the summit area. But gotta remember, this is on the southeastern flank of this volcano, and it's pretty big. It covers a good portion of the Big Island. You can kind of see it out here. So this is on the southeastern flank of it. Kilauea volcano sits up here. That's a minor concern right now. The major concern is right here at Mauna Loa, and I'm kind of curious to see what's going to stir up from this, considering it's much more shallower, larger earthquake activity. If we start to see a little bit more migration, then we definitely want to watch that pretty closely. The USGS is doing daily updates now on Mauna Loa, and just due to seismic unrest at the earthquake levels around the summit and towards the northwestern flank of Mauna Loa. And those daily activities were put out even prior to today's activity. So I think today's activity has these folks chatting and worrying maybe a little bit more. So it's I think it's a pretty hot topic right now, a pretty hot subject, and we'll be watching that pretty closely. I did add on to the live stream a local seismograph station here within this area called Hot Caves. So if you're watching the live stream and you're looking at the seismographs wondering where Hot Caves is, and you'll see all these little spikes, that's right here, like literally right around the Pahala area, picking up the swarming of earthquake activity today. So look for that if you're watching the live stream. Let's see what else. Back in 1984 was the last eruption. So that's a pretty good amount of time. I'd say this thing is a little overdue, and I think we're going to be seeing this thing kick up pretty soon, folks. I do want to bring up a seismograph station here around the southeastern flank of the Mauna Loa area. And let's see here. We'll pull up the past 12 hours. There's the 4.6 and the shadow of the, we got a 5.0 that occurred in that mix as well. So it kind of looks like just one giant earthquake. Hold on a second here. Let me double check. I want to make sure you guys are seeing it. Yes, you are. And a lot of folks did report feeling this earthquake, and I appreciate all the comments and stuff like that. Definitely chime in whenever you feel unusual activity or earthquake activity. But this earthquake probably felt a little bit more larger and more longer lasting than, say, for example, if it was just one earthquake. So literally you had a 4.6 and a 5.0 within seconds of each other, making this earthquake feel much more stronger and lasting much more longer. And sometimes we see stuff like that. So there was also some other 3s, and it looks like a 4 in there as well. And then it's been continuing over the past hour or so. Looks like it's kind of mellowed out a little bit, but this swarm is still ongoing, and it's a pretty big deal. Let me check out. Let me back out of here real quick, close that one out, and check out the station a little bit closer here. Now this one here, the amplitudes are kind of tuned up to where you can see some of the smaller quakes as well, compared to the previous graph that I showed you. The 5-pointer is not even on here. That was prior, up here a little bit. So the past 6 hours, the 5-pointer would be way up, and we're not looking at that. So what this map here does is brings up the amplitude of the seismograph line, the reading, the data, so to speak. And that's what we're seeing right here. 3s and 4s in the mix here, but you got to remember, look at all these other earthquakes in here. All of these little bitty specks here are all earthquakes. So there's a massive amount of swarming going on, and more than what the at least the USGS is showing on their map, the USGS map. So we got to remember that. Look at all these. If we were to go back to I did not mean to close that, but if we just go back to the past 12 hours, really can't see those in there, can you? All those other individual earthquakes. But if you look at the what do you keep doing that? Goodness, it's Friday night. Woohoo! But if you go back to the past 6 hours, yes, we can see there's many more earthquakes there than what the other maps are showing. So things definitely popping, rocking and rolling out there on the Big Island. And I think we're going to see some fireworks shooting off there pretty soon. Maybe not in that type of fashion, but goodness, this could be a major news maker here pretty soon. I would love to go out there and film that. So I'm keeping a very, very close eye on it. I've never been to Hawaii. My vacation spot is not really Hawaii material. Too many people for me. So if I go out to Hawaii, it's not for vacation. It's to see the scenery and the volcano. So I would definitely be landing here on the Big Island and making my way to this area, because that's what I do. I like to check out stuff and document and observe what's going on out here. So that's up on the list. I'm watching that pretty closely. One earthquake up here. We'll move on just a little bit. I got one earthquake up here in Montana. This is kind of an oddball earthquake, and I look for these, right? We do updates 2 times a day, maybe sometimes 3 if there's a lot of activity, and we always look at the normal areas, normal fault zones. But this up here is just out of the ordinary. A 3.2 way up here in Montana. There is some fault systems up here. It looks like it's just off of the Mission Fault Flathead Lake section, just to the south of that, the little southern portion it looks like. And pretty shallow at about 10 kilometers. Looks like a few folks did report feeling this earthquake, but not a lot. I don't know what the population density up there is in western Montana, but I'm sure the scenery is absolutely beautiful. I do love Montana. So that is kind of up against, I really don't want to go into the North American craton too much, but it is up against this landmass at the center of the North American plate, so to speak, the relatively stable landmass that hasn't really seen much deformation except for around it. Everything's moving around it. It's called the old North American craton. Kind of sits here within this area up against the eastern side of the Rocky Mountains and does extend down here in that type of fashion. And that's kind of where this earthquake struck at tonight. But it's just kind of an odd deal right there. Let me see what we got going on in Yellowstone. They're not showing too much earthquake activity there at Yellowstone. Let me bring up the Yellowstone overview real quick and see what we got. There's that 3.2 kind of showing up on the graph in Yellowstone. But notice here, and this is a really good schooling lecture here, so to speak, is the blip. The earthquake signature is there. We can see it, and it showed up across a couple areas of the Yellowstone area. But you can tell pretty specifically that this is a distant earthquake away from Yellowstone. More localized activity is well defined, spiky, and definitely more prominent reading compared to that 3.2 up in Montana. So, but it did show up. It definitely did show up here towards the northwestern corner of the park. As far as specific earthquake activity at Yellowstone goes, yes, we're still seeing a swarm, and it's been ongoing here for about 6 weeks. Not a big one yet, but that could change. We're keeping an eye on all the activity there at Yellowstone, and some of these specks here, these little spikes, are all microquakes. But there's a lot. If you look at over the course of the last 24 hours, there's probably a good, I don't know, 20 or 30 of them, maybe a little bit more. And that's a lot more than what the USGS is showing. They're only showing 3. So either way, activity is still continuing there at Yellowstone National Park. We did see some activity, of course, around the Blanco Fracture Zone. 3.4 coming in there. It looks like earlier this afternoon time frame. Northern California, things are a little spotty. Haven't really seen too much in the way of changes throughout the Northern California area. Just some spotty movement. Same for the Southern California area. Just San Jacinto Fault Zone. Nothing going on along the San Andreas Fault for now. The Texas area, outside of Pecos, getting in on some movement as well. The latest earthquake there shows a 2.7. We got one earthquake up here on the border. That's kind of an odd area away from the swarm. Kind of curious to see what's going on up there with the satellite view. What do you guys see out there? What are these things? What are these little squares and little rectangles out there on the satellite view? What do you guys think those are? What does it look like? What does all this stuff look like? It kind of looks like a video game or something out there, doesn't it? Well, those are all oil pumping operations out there in the desert of Texas. And a lot of times these earthquakes strike within those zones. And 3.4, it's definitely one of them. These guys look active in production-wise. I see some wastewater ponds and definitely some operations here across the area. There's another operation, another field operation there. And this earthquake definitely struck within that zone. A little pond out here in the desert as well. It's not a swimming hole. That's for certain. I don't think it's a starport. I can't really tell, but it looks like water to me. So that activity continuing out there in the oil fields, and that will continue for many, many years to come and get bigger in magnitudes and more frequent. Oklahoma still seeing some activity, although it kind of came to a halt this afternoon time frame. Still kind of watching that area for some potential larger movement. Over here around the Puerto Rico Trench, you got one earthquake right smack dab on the Puerto Rico Trench. Got to watch this area. This one's capable of producing a pretty large earthquake, mega quake, potentially an 8.0 is what I read throughout my studies, and I think that would probably create a tsunami for the Atlantic area. A lot of people worried about the Pacific. Sometimes the Atlantic holds some secrets as well. 4.1 coming in here within the last about an hour and a half time frame. Looks like about 47 kilometers deep. 2.2 down in the Puerto Rico area where that swarming has always been consistent down there. South America, not a whole lot going on. The South Sandwich Islands is zooming or kind of active again. It looks like a couple fives kicking up here, and they're kind of spread out, indicating some regional pressure as a whole. Got a 5.2 down into the South Sandwich Trench area at about 42 kilometers deep. A little bit of adjustment going on down there. Over here in the Fiji area, got a 5.5 came in earlier this afternoon. We haven't really seen too much adjustment over here as far as newer activity goes. Looks like the most recent one going to be this 5.1 in the Papua New Guinea area, 25 kilometers deep. So things kind of backfilling, so to speak, here about the center portion of the Pacific Plate eastward into the North American region. So a whole lot of kind of strange activity occurring, so definitely be on guard, folks. The Alaska area got one earthquake back before the subduction zone, 2.7, and most of the activity there, microquake activity, into the Alaska region. Let's go ahead and check out the tremor map here tonight and see what we got. 512 epicenters up here along the Cascadia subduction zone, centered in our two spots once again in Oregon. This has been an ongoing thing here for a couple weeks now, and just not 100% certain what this is leading to, but it's something worth watching pretty closely there along the Oregon coast. Of course, we got the Cascadia subduction zone. That's something everyone should know about. I think that's something everyone living up there should know about. That's for certain. Let's see what else we got here. Let's see, solar. Are we going to check out solar weather activity? We'll check this out here real quick. We did have a little bit of elevated conditions there around the KP index at 4. Looks like things have kind of calmed down, at least a little bit. There's still a little bit of amplification there of the aurora borealis at the higher latitudes there. Looks like maybe Greenland, Iceland area getting in on some auroras. At least there's a probability of it. No major expected solar flare events or any type of solar weather activity expected here. 3119, 3112, all saying goodbye. In fact, in the latest imagery, they're kind of decaying over here. And we're left with, we're left with these little guys. And I don't know. It doesn't look like they're going to create any type of major party out here for the space weather events that we kind of look for. Things are kind of mellow across the board right now, folks. So that's what's going on out there. Either way, we'll hope for some further development, possibly in the next coming weeks. We'll definitely keep a close eye on it. All right, guys. What do we got? 24 minutes. All right, not super long. I didn't want to go super long. So, looking at, oh goodness, there's California right now. I don't know why. At least here where I live, has a massive amount of flies. And I'm not for sure what's going on with them. We had less mosquitoes this year because of the rice fields. We didn't fill up the rice fields this year because of no water. But the flies are horrible. And so I got this one fly that's kind of in here bugging me, and it's just annoying, let me tell you. So looking right here, guys, the Hot Caves EHZ station. That is the one to watch. That's a station very close to the Pahala area in Hawaii that's monitoring all the earthquake activity. And there's quite a bit, as you can see, even coming in here within the last few minutes. So that's a localized station. There on the Big Island, also 5.2 right now coming into the Tonga area. This one about 124 kilometers deep. A little bit of adjustment taking place right now. Things starting to get pretty active out here on this beautiful planet we live on, and just got to roll with the punches and be prepared. And we'll definitely keep our eye on Mauna Loa, because I have a feeling, again, that's going to be the hot topic here pretty soon. All right, guys, have a good night. Stay safe out there. Friday night can be pretty crazy. I'm going to lock my door, put my pillow over my head, and go to sleep. Have a good night, folks. Stay safe, everyone. Peace out.